Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, Week 4 DraftKings picks preview for the Sunday main slate only. So if you want to have some Monday or Thursday or early Sunday or late Sunday picks, go to dkplaybook.com, check all of that out. You can find all my rankings up there and all the shows. If you do subscribe to the video version on the YouTube DraftKings page, it's all up there, and on iTunes, Google Play, Audio Boom, and Stitcher for all the video for the audio versions. And please give the show a like, support the show, spread it around, all that. Let's get right into it. Davis Mattek is back. He's on the line. He's from the Swolecast. What's going on, my man?
The people wanted this, Pat.
They did. I wanted this too. In fairness, I really wanted this too. But you're a real big shot. You're on the Swolecast. People love that. If people don't know what it is, tell them where they can find it and when it's on.
The Swolecast, you can find it at Roto Grinders. It is at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern on Fridays. It is free while it is live and for 2 hours afterward, and then it is part of the NFL Premium package on Roto Grinders. But if you want to watch it for free, just go to the YouTube channel or go to the Roto Grinders Twitter feed there on Friday to watch me, Evan Silva, Mr. Tuttle 05, and Soccer David.
Oh, I mean, if I wasn't like out doing stuff on Friday night, I'd watch it live.
Yeah, I mean, watching it live is the best because like I'll just sit there and argue with people in chat the whole time. Like that's like the real value added of watching it live.
Oh, that sounds terrific. Maybe I will cancel my Friday night plans and come do that then.
Yeah, like people try and like get me tilted like on air. It works sometimes. Sometimes the chat can like put me on real tilt.
Sometimes it puts you on tilt. I would assume that's 99% of the time.
It's like a good percent of the time they're able to put me on tilt.
All right, ready to get into this?
Let's do it.
All right, running backs for the Sunday main slate. At the top, we're going to go with Le'Veon Bell, $8,700. Shady, Elliott, Gurley, Freeman, Gordon. That is your $7,000 to the very top. Then below $7,000, Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, Carlos Hyde, and Dalvin Cook. Davis, if you are starting cash games, where are you going from this top group? Because when I look at all the pricing and just how everything is distributed this week, I kind of like Christian McCaffrey just based on the fact that he's probably going to get 10 catches in this game.
I think McCaffrey is interesting, but the first guy in for me this week, the first guy when salaries came out, I checked him first, Dalvin Cook. Stone cold lock, Dalvin Cook this week at home to the Detroit Lions.
Was it because of the price in it, the discrepancy between players of, I mean, I don't want to say that maybe he is better than Ezekiel Elliott, I don't know, but he happens to be $1,700 cheaper. Is it the price only based on his volume?
If him and Elliott were the same price, I might play Cook anyway.
Okay, so he's that big of a value for you.
Yeah, I think that the DraftKings pricing has been tight this year, but the one thing they haven't done that they haven't adjusted quickly enough is these rookie running backs or these young running backs who are getting like their first crack at like real touches. So like Kareem Hunt was only 8,000 last week. He was leading the NFL in rushing yards. Dalvin Cook with 28 or more touches already. And he's being priced at 6,500. He's at home against a terrible defense. Like, I don't see any way that a guy who has 13 targets through 3 games and is getting the monopoly of like all the important rushing work for his team is 6,500.
So do you have any interest in any of the other top guys, or it's Cook for you and then you're dropping down, or is there anyone else for cash that we're talking about right away? Is there anyone else in this upper tier that you would even consider, or would you just strictly hit values after this?
No, I think Elliott is a legit play, and I got really burned by him in week 2, that game at Denver, and I don't think he looked great at home or at Arizona.
Yeah, he didn't. He looked kind of slow.
He looked kind of slow. Like there was one long run where 2016 Zeke would have scored, and he only got like an 18-yarder. Like there was definitely a couple of those, but if I'm looking at these running backs at the top, I hate this matchup for Lev. The Steelers have just been terrible on the road, and Bell, I mean, his efficiency is just dead. Like he doesn't look fast. The offense doesn't look good. Ajay, I think, getting no targets. Like I just can't imagine playing him at all. Like his reception floor looks lower than Elliott's, than anyone's. The one I actually think people should play.
Remember, stick to the main slate.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, the one I would not play that I think people, or the one I would play that I think people are not going to consider is Gurley.
Why don't you think people would be considering Gurley? Because that was one of the things that stuck out to me right away. Just with his reception base increasing every single week and him getting the monopoly of everything going on. The only time that he got spelled in the Thursday Nighter was for stupid Tavon Austin carries. And yeah, I don't know if we're going to be seeing too much of that in the future. But whether it's rushing near the goal line, catching it near the goal line, like Gurley is doing everything. If you think this offense is markedly better than it was last year and they're not just going to be awful and they're going to score points against Dallas, I don't see why you wouldn't turn to Gurley. It seems like he's 20, 25 touches, lock that in, plus all the important touches.
So the reason I think people won't be on Gurley to the level that his like fantasy points per game would indicate is there are probably still some people who believe he's a plotter. There are probably some people that just never take road running backs anyways. Like, that's just a general rule. They don't take a road running back.
Well, an underdog road running back at that.
Yeah. And then the other factor is that I think people would rather take Elliott, and they're priced very similarly. So I think that's going to move ownership on Elliott. But I actually think, personally, I'm like undecided on, Wednesday at 11:22 Central Time. I don't actually know which one is the better play. I'm not decided.
I really enjoy that even when you mentioned the Swolecast, that you give the Central Time first. The only people that would ever do that would be people who live in the Central Time Zone.
It's the realest time zone to me. I struggle with time zones, so I have to think of everything in Central Time first and then translate it. It's like when you learn a language that's the opposite of what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to think in the language and then translate it. But with time, I have to think in Central Time and then translate it to whatever else.
That happened to me when I learned how to speak French. I still, in my mind, that's why I'm still terrible at speaking French. Je ne pas parler français très bien. That's about like a line that I've memorized that's all I have at this point, because I try to get everything in English and then reverse put it back out in French. It just doesn't work.
That's what I took in college. I took French, and that was my problem too, is I was always thinking in English first and then trying to translate it. So my French never got that good.
No, because you really have to do everything backwards when you speak it out loud. It sucks.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think what you and I are saying is we're not that sharp.
Yeah, I think that if people were watching this show, they probably know that as well.
Yeah, that's realistic. But I don't know. Would you play Gurley or Elliott? What do you think?
I think I would play Gurley. I do like that Elliott's catching the ball more, but the one good thing about Gurley so far this season, and I think we saw it in the Skins game a little bit, that even if game script goes against him, that might actually fuel more receptions for him, where I don't know if that's going to be the case with Dallas. So let's say Dallas, even though they're favored in this game, let's say they get behind. Are they just going to start peppering Ezekiel Elliott with catches? Like, you have to hedge against that, because Dallas has been a really confusing team to figure out. Listen, I thought they would roll Arizona. That game was closer than I thought it would be, and that would concern me, because I don't think that Arizona is all that good. And I can't figure out if the Rams are good or not. Like, yeah.
No, the Rams are good.
Are they good?
The Rams are yes. The Rams are good. That is I'm willing to they're good. The Rams are a good football team.
Well, per DVOA loves the Rams right now. But, beating up on the Niners and then, having the Niners come back on you, I'm not sold that this offense... they beat the Colts, they beat the Niners, and then they got beat by the Skins. They haven't faced a good team yet. I don't even know if Dallas is that team. I can't even figure out...
Dallas is not that good.
Put it this way, and Dallas is your team too, right?
Yeah, Dallas is my team, and I will tell you that the team from last year, I don't see it. Dak is still learning. I think a lot of people were just like, oh, Dallas, Dak is going to be better this year, yada, yada. Elliott doesn't look as good. The defense looks, atrocious. And Dak is still learning. He's still learning how to play quarterback in the NFL.
All right, well, I think between those two, and the other reason I would go with Gurley is that I think that Dallas' defense is much worse than the Rams' defense. And not to say that you can't run on the Rams' defense. We saw that on Thursday night. Carlos Hyde had no problems. But I think that the path to a higher upside runs through the Dallas defense instead of through the Rams defense.
Yeah, and the other reason that people would not take Gurley is the Dallas time per play thing, the offense just holding the ball. But actually, Dallas is running the 12th fastest offense this year, and if you look at it situation neutral, they are 16th, so they're right at league average in times per play.
Who are the top five in that?
The top five fastest offense seconds per play total are Seattle, Cleveland, Miami, Arizona, and the Giants.
And who are the bottom five?
The bottom five are Kansas City, the Jets, Carolina, Baltimore, and Atlanta. And Kansas City doing that is miserable, because what it's doing is it's making Kareem Hunt have to score a 50-yard touchdown every week to be this like legendary fantasy player that he is. Like if they speed up at all, Hunt's numbers are going to be crazy.
And I think it easily boxes out Kelsey when you don't run a lot of plays too. So you're either going to see weeks where Kelsey scores really big or basically nothing at all.
Yeah, like Kelsey is going to have one of the largest standard deviations in like FPPG of like any player in fantasy, because he'll have 30-point weeks, and he had 1 catch for 1 yard last week against the Chargers. And that team is always in a positive game script, because they're like the Chiefs are probably the best team in the NFL, first or second.
Is that what people are saying around your area in the central time zone?
That is what people are saying. I'm actually wearing my Chiefs polo right now. Actually, people here are generally more sort of pessimistic about the team, because everyone here hates Alex. They hate Alex, man. Like you do not hear people say positive things about Alex, even when the team is 3-0.
If people don't understand why looking at pace of play, although it might be somewhat obvious, can you explain to people why that's an important thing to look at when trying to project out fantasy points?
More plays equal more targets, equal more rush attempts, equal more fantasy points in general. Games with more plays have more yards, and especially the format we're talking about on DraftKings, the PPR adds such a layer to extra plays per game, because like, you know, those 6-yard slant routes that Danny Amendola catches in a high-pace game are worth so much more than in a low-pace game. And I would assume, I don't have the research on this, like firsthand, but I would assume that high-paced games lead to more pass receptions for running backs as well, because there are more check-down opportunities.
Where do you find these stats anyway?
There are a lot of different places that you can find pace stats. The one that I use personally is Football Outsiders, because I don't like to read fantasy football analysis. Like I think there are a lot of people who do great work, but I don't really care about anyone else's opinion other than mine. So I just want the data. And Football Outsiders just has the pure data with no subjectivity to it at all.
And that's free to use as well, right?
Free to use, yeah. And then another resource is Pro Football Reference. They don't have it based on seconds, but you can just look at total plays ran and total plays allowed by defenses and offenses.
People always ask me where I get my snap counts from, because I release the totals every Monday afternoon, and I generally stay away. So if you're watching this show, then boom, a spoiler alert for everyone out there. If you want to find snap counts, Pro Football Reference is where I get them from. You just go to the box score, hit snap counts, and you can find them all. It's that easy. It really is.
Yeah, they used to not have them.
Now they do.
You used to have to pay for snap counts, like, because Pro Football Focus was the only site that like accumulated them, and then people were just like, well, why don't we just make this data free, which is awesome.
Yeah, and people love doing it too. Like, and people knew that Pro Football Focus used to do it for the longest time, and now I just don't think that people realize that Pro Football Reference has it.
Yeah, like honestly, if you were just like sort of a casual DFS player, like not someone who is getting $5,000 down a week or whatever, you would not have to pay for any fantasy football data. Like there's enough free resources out there to not have to pay for anything.
Yeah, the thing that people should be paying for is for golf stats, because they're hard to find. So if you go to fantasynational.com right now, the founding member program is still open for another week. So if you want to go there and get the deal on the season-long data, you know, that's something you might want to check out, fantasynational.com. Let's get back to running backs, though, because we kind of deviated from what we were talking about. Shady's up there in a pretty good matchup against Atlanta in terms of being a soft defense. He's still catching a ton of passes. That's all great news. And then on the other side, you have Devonta Freeman. I have a feeling that he might go under-owned again this week.
Freeman, I love. I think Freeman, this is the first time in the year that I plan on putting Devonta Freeman as a cash play in my column, in my my automatic absolutes. Here's a crazy stat on Tyrod Taylor in the Bills offense. There's been 6 times where Tyrod has been the starting quarterback and the Bills have been a touchdown or more dog. He averages 35 passing attempts in those 6 games. In the other 37 games in his career, he averages 19 passing attempts. They throw almost 80% more often when they're giant underdogs, which is, you would think sounds bad for McCoy, but with his target share in that offense, that could be like 9 targets.
So do you think that he seems a bit too, like, it seems needless to have to pay up for McCoy at $8,400 this week, especially in cash? It might be too much with the tight pricing that you talked about. But for GPPs, I mean, he hasn't looked great so far this season, but that target base is always going to be there, that he's not going to really let you down in a spot. And if he can break a big one or potentially two, could he be a game changer here?
Yeah, I would not play him in cash, but I do think that he could have like a Christian McCaffrey game from last week where he has like 35 rushing yards or something, but he could have 10 receptions. He could get the 100-yard receiving bonus, and he could definitely score a receiving touchdown because Atlanta's defense is not great in and of itself. Like they put you in uncomfortable positions with their offense, and they hold the ball. They're one of those teams that we were talking about running a slower pace, but they are going to put the Bills in a situation where they are going to run a ton of passing plays against the defense that ranks 21st overall in DVOA.
I guess my only issue with Shady that we've seen so far, it's like Tolbert coming in, and like they're not afraid to use Tolbert near the goal line. Like I hate it so much.
True story. Drew Dinkmeyer, I help him out with this keeper league that he does every year, and it was like the 14th round in a keeper league where like every relevant player is kept. And I was like, Drew, you just have to take Tolbert, man. And he like mocked me. He like legitimately mocked me for bringing up Tolbert. And I was like, dude, it's a real thing. And it is. Like when you looked at their running back depth chart after they let
Johnny Williams.
What was that guy's? Yeah. After they let him go, it was like, dude, Tolbert is going to be the third down like goal line back. This is just a lock. And that's exactly what's happening.
The last guy I want to talk about from this upper range is the most expensive guy, Le'Veon Bell's $8,700. Yes, he's been inefficient, but even last week, just getting that touchdown, he scored 22 DraftKings points. Yeah. I went and looked at Baltimore's defense, and we're going to get to Jesse James a little bit later on, but I do like the tight ends against Baltimore this week. But they've also allowed at least 6 passing targets to running backs in every single game so far this season. And if it's going to be tough to move the ball down the field, I could see that number going up for Le'Veon Bell. And if it's almost getting to the point now where I know he's going to be lowly owned. No one gets market share like he does in an offense. He's going to get him. He's averaging 27 touches the past 2 games. You give him 27 again, I don't know how much he's going to be able to do with it against the Ravens defense, but I think it's getting to a point where it's almost like where I bet Siwoo Kim every week in golf because he wins, like 4% of the time, and he's always like 200 to 1. That with Bell, where he's the most talented guy, if we're getting him at 5%, eventually all these touches are going to translate into something. I might just play him like 20% on my GPP teams every single week until it happens.
Yeah, I think that's just like a decision you have to make now. Like, I don't believe that that's something that you should just, like, change based on, like, how he looks in one game or, like, him scoring 2 touchdowns in one game. I just think it's something that you should be like, all right, I think that all this workload is 100% going to translate into a GPP winning week for me. Or you have to think, Roethlisberger doesn't look good. They're bad on the road. They're cutting out some of those check down passes to Bell. I don't want to be allocating, X amount of my dollars every week to Bell teams. I fall more on the side of like that workload is kind of irreplaceable, but I'm like not considering him in cash even like 1% this week.
No, I wouldn't consider him in cash either. It's just he's too expensive and he just frankly doesn't look very good. So that's going to be tough to do. You can pay down and probably produce better points per dollar potentially from guys like Dalvin Cook or even guys like Fournette and Hyde, who I don't love for cash games, but I think both are good options this week as well. It's weird. All the running backs, like the top 10 running backs, it's good work on their pricing because the top 10 guys are like the 10 guys that you would really want to play this week. And then it gets real dicey after you drop off.
Yeah, I think Fournette is a guy that I think is going to be under-owned this week. Like he's been
under-owned every week.
Yeah, and the Jets did beat the Dolphins last week, but I kind of think that this Jacksonville defense is just going to pin them back. Like, I think it's going to be a kind of a brutal game for the Jets.
All right, so the one last guy I wanted to talk about in that like around $6,000 range, DeMarco Murray $6,000, but Joe Mixon is $5,700, and just the share of snaps that he got last week in Green Bay, now he gets Cleveland. It seems like this offense is shifting towards him. Is this the week to get in on him before he really explodes? And if he's only like $6,300 next week coming off a 2-touchdown game or something stupid like that, he's going to be like 40% owned. That I think there might be enough concerns about the workload, about us not having seen it yet, that people might stay off of him even though he gets talked up around the industry a little bit.
Do you have the snap counts for him handy?
I have all the snap counts very handy. Just let me.
Because when I went to go do my write-up this week, I put him in. Like, I think that was like another price to me that jumped out, because he was another guy who, like, I think he looked pretty good. Like, his yards per carry wasn't great, like 3.4 yards per carry or whatever. But he did have a long run of 20 yards. He did. And getting 3 targets while Gio Bernard also had a good game, and a game that they were leading for like a good chunk of the way, was also pretty encouraging to me.
So the snap count for Cincinnati last week was Mixon 34, Hill 14, and Gio 13.
And I guess that's about what you would expect, as long as Hill is still playing. The real upside for Mixon is going to be if he brings Hill down to like 8 snaps a game. That's how Mixon becomes a $7,000 running back. Because Gio is 100%. He will just be playing snaps. Mixon's not going to be good enough to send Gio to the bench. But if he like 100% replaces Jeremy Hill, then yeah, he's going to be like a very good play. And also, I mean, the Browns are so bad.
Yeah.
Like the Browns got schooled by the Colts. Like, no way around it. Like, Kaiser is just like a turnover machine. I know Kaiser had a good fantasy game. He did not have a good real life game.
No, but Kaiser and Cash has been like a thing. He's worked 2 or 3 weeks.
Kaiser and Cash, Kaiser and Cash, Brissett and Cash, Simeon and Cash, Tyrod Taylor and Cash. This is a week to not spend anything on quarterback.
Yeah, Trevor Simeon is like the price. Even Deshaun Watson is an awesome price this week too.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that when we get to quarterback. So the rest of the running backs, like, I'm just kind of scrolling down here. I wouldn't use Mixon and Cash, by the way. He'd be a GPP play for me because I think there's more value that you can get to for, there's still uncertainty around him, and even if he gets goal line carries and stuff like that, but I think he is a quality GPP play for the upside. So then you get like CJ Anderson, Gillisley, Derrick Henry, Tevin Coleman, White, Marshawn Lynch, like that's the rest of your $5,000.
They all suck.
Yeah, I mean, C.J. Anderson's intriguing just because I think that people will be off of him after Charles stole his touchdown. He didn't have a great week, but I'm more going to be invested in the Broncos' passing game than the rushing game. But I think that's an area and a player that could go overlooked who has a lot of upside because he might monopolize the goal line carries if he doesn't have to come off the field because he got tired from too long of a run and Charles comes on. But it's this next little tier that I kind of like. So you have like Crowell, Buck Allen, Bilal Powell, Duke Johnson, Lamar Miller's down there, Theo Riddick, Brennan Oliver, Jaquiz Rogers, all the way down to Wendell Smallwood, who we'll talk about in a second. But Matt Forte is not playing. The Jets just signed Travaris Cadet and some other like loser running back. But in games when Forte didn't play last year, all the talk that I did in the preseason about Bilal Powell was if the Jets are losing, they use Bilal Powell, and if Matt Forte doesn't play, he's going to get like 25 touches a game. The crappy part is that they're playing Jacksonville. Now, this could lead to 1 to 2 things. Now, there might not be a lot of opportunity for him to score touchdowns, which sucks, and the rushing ability might not be there, but could this be like an 8-catch game for Bilal Powell?
Yeah, it could be like 8 catches for like 27 yards, though.
It could be, but I guess it really depends on what Jacksonville does offensively in this game, or if the defense can do some scoring for them. But it's a really tricky situation because I always think that Bilal Powell, based on his skill set, is always a better cash game play than a GPP play because he never really has that touchdown upside, although he did get one last week. But in this game in particular, where the Jags offense is not reliable enough to be like, oh, well, they're going to put up 30 on the Jets, and it's just going to be against prevent the entire time, and check down to Powell, they're going to go for like 15 yards apiece. But if he ends up with one of these 8 for 27 games, and that would be like the high end of receptions, even that's not really worth this price, and that puts me in a really tricky situation because I think that all the volume is going to be there. I just don't know how good that volume is. Now, flip side to it, the guy right next to him who kind of burned everyone last week, Buck Allen, I actually think is in a really nice spot against the Steelers.
I think Buck Allen is interesting. A name that I don't think will be out there at all is Wendell Smallwood.
I think he will be. I think Smallwood's going to end up being
he'll be kind of chalky?
I think so. I mean, I don't know for sure, obviously, but he's right now inside the top 10 of Fanshare Sports mentions really early in the week. He's a great price, and I think that like every waiver wire column that was written this week, including mine, had Smallwood as the top available guy to go pick up, and he's only $4,100. Like, if you're not going to play him down in this range and you're trying to pay down at running back, like your only other options are like Stewart against the Patriots, which is Abdullah, or like Jaquiz Rogers. Like, I think people would just rather roll the dice on Smallwood because he played 55% of the snaps last week after Sproles went out, and if they're underdogs in this game, he appears to be the one who's going to be their pass-catching running back.
The Chargers are so bad, though. Like, Rivers probably throws another 3 picks in this game.
Yeah, I can see that.
Don't you think? He's so egregious.
Yeah, but Rivers is weird. Like
He's real weird.
So like he might come out and throw 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in this game. Like yeah, he seems like it was like week 1 against Denver. He looked horrible for a while, and then he started dicing them up. And that's a pretty good defense. It's probably a better defense than the Eagles' defense. So it's really confusing with me how to get a gauge on Phillip Rivers. He's not trustworthy ever, but sometimes he shows up in difficult spots and lets down in really easy spots. So I find it hard to predict. But that defense, especially up the middle, is very susceptible to everything, it seems.
I think that a good projection for Smallwood is like 12 to 15 carries and like 4 to 7 targets. And like that's real good for that price.
Yeah, I think I will be considering using him in cash depending on how I structure my team, but I'll probably go 2 big running backs at the top, pay for like mid-tier receivers, and then try to figure out the rest and see what I need.
Yeah, I think that's probably reasonable. I think like your decision is going to be something like Smallwood or like cheap wide receiver in flex, like Marquise Lee versus Smallwood.
See, I think Marquise Lee, let's switch to receivers right now and talk about some of the values that you can get down there if you need a flex player, low-end guy. I think Marquise Lee is a lock down here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he looks really good. He's doubled up Hearns in targets, but Hearns has scored. But, I mean, looking at these games, he has 21 targets since Allen Robinson left with an ACL injury. So, just, at that price, I kind of just feel like he's a lock.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. And for what... He doesn't need to score a touchdown to return cash value really at all. So if he does get a touchdown, now you're looking at a really, really potentially 5x play from the price because he's going to get his 7 catches on 11 targets for like 70 yards and be on his way. And they were using him in the red zone last week. He just didn't come through for it.
Yeah, 2 straight red zone targets.
Although I don't think throwing a jump ball to a 5'8" guy is the smartest allocation of red zone plays. But, they're there. They're the Jags. This is what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Is he still returning punts? He is, isn't he?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Because he'd be someone interesting if he is. I have to go look in this. I'm sorry I don't have that information off the top of my head.
Double dip?
Yeah, the double dip because the Jags D is going to be a play this week. So if you play a Lee with the Jags D, maybe you get something big out of it.
I will go look and see the Jaguars punt return stats right now.
Anyone stuck out to you from like the low end wide receivers that are just super cheap? Because Bruce Ellington, I played him last week. I think I'm going to come back to him again this week in a matchup where you think that Watson probably has to throw a lot against the Titans.
I think Ellington is like sort of interesting. I like Kenny Britt again. He had 10 targets last week, and the only reason I say that is every other receiver on the Browns is like unspeakably bad.
Okay, well, everyone went all in on Rashard Higgins last week.
Yes.
Would this be a week to just allocate like 5% exposure to him in GPPs because no one will want to own him ever again? He had, 8 targets?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. Just like, dude, he had 3 offensive pass interferences and 2 drops. Like he had one of the worst games. He had a 34.1 grade from PFF. Like he was so, and Britt honestly was not much better. He had some drops, and if you actually watch the touchdown he scored, he was interfered with, right? But the interference kept him from going out of bounds. The only reason that touchdown, the only reason he landed in bounds was because the defender kept him in bounds with the interference. He just was. They were all terrible. Every single Browns pass catcher was so bad.
After watching the Monday Nighter and seeing Bryce Butler get behind the Arizona defense, I'm taking another shot at Marquise Goodwin. He's turned it. You know how last year and the past 2 years when we were doing this show, I just played Ted Ginn every week, hoping he'd score a really long touchdown?
He's the new air yards guy.
Yeah, I think he's the new Ted Ginn.
Yeah.
And you can get
much worse quarterback situation.
Same amount of bad hands.
Yeah, Goodwin, man, this is crazy. Silva said this on the Swolecast. Going all the way back to his years at the University of Texas, Austin, has never had a 500-yard receiving season.
Really?
Isn't that crazy?
Well, how many games does he ever play? He's always injured for half the season, too.
I feel like he played, a lot of games at least one season with the Bills.
Yeah, but he was never on the field all that much. They would literally just bring him in to do wind sprints down the field, and sometimes Tyrod would throw to him.
So last year for Buffalo, he played 15 games, had 9 starts, 68 targets, 431 yards.
Wow. And I bet you he had 3 80-yard plays.
Yeah, well, he had 68 targets and 29 receptions, 42% catch rate.
I feel like there's going to be one game where he's going to win someone $1 million at some point, one of these weeks.
I mean, yeah, that I think everyone in the larger DFS community believes that Goodwin has a 4-catch, 124-yard, 2-touchdown game in him. Like, that's possible.
Yeah, and this is a right defense to do that against, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I have limited my exposure since week 1. I thought he was like a potential cash play because he was like either the dead min or like 3,200. But after watching Hoyer play, I was just like, nah, I'm scaling it back.
Yeah, Goodwin also doesn't do himself any favors by letting the ball hit him in the face and the chest and watching it fall to the ground.
Oh yeah, his first deep target was in his hands, had it in the breadbasket. It was not an easy catch. Like, he had a defender on him, but he had it. It touched his hands, and it just fell away harmlessly to the turf.
All right, so elite wide receivers. If we go to the top, you have Antonio Brown. He is 93, and then below the $9,000 threshold in the 8s, you have Beckham, Jones, and Green. And then the 7s, you have Cooks, Evans, Keenan Allen, and Stefon Diggs. Is there one of those guys that you really like? Because I'm in the situation where I'm thinking about Odell Beckham versus A.J. Green in terms of who I really want to use. I'm worried about Julio with the back injury, and Brown's in a tougher matchup against the Ravens. Not to say that Brown can't overcome that matchup. He definitely can, but those are the two that I really want to focus on. I really like Beckham in this situation, and I think that everyone gravitated towards A.J. Green last week. He was super chalky, and he came through for everyone. And what I saw from Beckham only played 80% of the snaps last week too, and he still scored 2 touchdowns. He has as many red zone targets as AJ Green does. He's only played really 1 game. I'm throwing out that Monday nighter where he clearly was not 100%. He was essentially a decoy in that game.
Yeah, he was a decoy.
And after just watching Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen just go nuts with deep plays and long plays against the Bucs, I mean, Levante David's going to be out. Like, they have injuries.
They have a bunch of guys hurt.
Yeah, so like, why can't Beckham just go mental in this game?
I mean, he can, but like my biggest thing right now with DraftKings specifically is game scripts have been so dramatic in the NFL through the first 3 weeks. Like, we've just seen these games with like really wide scores. Like, and I think it's related to like the quality of football. Like, I think practice times being cut short are just making these teams worse. Like, a lot of teams are playing bad football. And when a lot of teams are playing bad football, you're going to get these weird game scripts, and paying for a wide receiver versus paying for a running back kind of kills you, because if they randomly get in a bad game script, like you're getting 8 points. You're getting 8 points from one of these guys if their team is up like 14-0 in the first quarter, just because coaches get conservative and like it's all about just like trying to like salt out wins. So I don't see myself paying for Brown, Beckham, Jones, Green, Cooks, Evans, like any of those guys. The expensive one that I think is kind of a lock is Diggs.
Now, a lot of people have been talking about Slay locking down Diggs. Do you see that happening?
No, because Diggs is so good. Diggs, like, it just, and also Diggs is different than a majority of the guys that Slay is going to cover because of how he gets open and how he runs his routes. First thing is that he is able to generate separation really well. And the second thing is that when he doesn't generate separation really well, he's one of the best in the NFL at contested catch rates. Like, there was one of the NFL.com guys tweeted out some next gen stats, and basically like throughout this season in like contested catch spots, like Diggs is coming out the winner like 80% of the time.
Would you give any consideration to Keenan Allen, who's right above him, in what projects to be a decent matchup against a banged-up Philly defense?
Yeah, those I looked at both of those two, like when I was like going to go put through my initial cash game lineup, and I decided on Diggs, but I think Allen is a play. The difference is I just think Diggs is a better player, and also Keenan Allen is just like not a touchdown maker. That's not really what he does, whereas Diggs has the ability to be a red zone weapon.
He can be the ability to be a red zone weapon too, and if you had to ask me which one of them is going to break a big one by himself, it would probably be Diggs over Allen as well.
For sure, yeah.
All right, so
Marquise Lee does do the punt returns.
He does do the punt returns, so you could double dip with the Jags and Marquise Lee.
Correct.
Like, is that a cash play? Like, independently, I like both those plays and the price for both. So why not put them together?
Yeah, I have another favorite defense this week, but I do think Jacksonville is like the best like raw point potential.
So below Diggs at 6,500, there's a big gap there too, from 71 down to 65. It goes Dez, Hopkins, Golden Tate, Demaryius Thomas, Alshon Jeffrey, Crabtree, Larry Fitz, Emmanuel Sanders, Chris Hogan, and then we're into Kelvin Benjamin, who's still questionable to play, but he's $6,000. From this range, I really like Golden Tate. I really like Demaryius Thomas. I think my favorite play is Emmanuel Sanders.
Sanders is a lock, like straight up. Just like I don't actually understand why Demaryius is priced over him, and I'm a Demaryius guy. Like I'm invested in Demaryius Thomas's career, dynasty, seasonal, daily. Doesn't matter. Love that guy, but Sanders is the better play right now, 100%.
What about someone? I think people are kind of like overlooking Golden Tate a little bit, and the fact that he can just carve up Minnesota.
They are because of like Xavier Rhodes. But what people don't realize about Golden Tate is he can play left wide receiver, he can play right wide receiver, he goes into the slot, they move him across the formation. They will do what it takes to get him open and to get him the ball. And like he's like an amazing GPP play because he will be unowned for a guy that generates as many targets as he does.
Are we even sure that Xavier Rhodes is going to be on him?
I'm sure that the Vikings will try and get that matchup, but the Lions are also aware of that and will do what it takes to get like Diggs in motion, or not Diggs, Tate. They will get him in motion. They will get him away from him as much as possible.
And we saw that week 1 when everyone was afraid of Golden Tate because Patrick Peterson was going to lock him down. Then everyone was afraid of him week 2 because Janoris Jenkins was going to take him out. Like that just hasn't happened. Now, week 2 against the Giants, the Lions just didn't have to throw, so that's why he had a bad game. But I mean, season-long wise, I talked up Tate before the season as a low-end wide receiver 1 in PPR leagues. I have him on basically every team that I have, and I am pretty thrilled with the market share that he's seeing right now.
Yeah, you have to be, because Marvin Jones has kind of been like a non-entity thus far.
They're taking shots with Marvin Jones, though. Like, for all the big breakout that everyone thought that Golladay was going to have, especially through the preseason, then week 1 he just shows up again. There's still, every week, shots to the end zone with Marvin Jones. It's just a thing that they do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the only Lions pass catcher I really want in DFS, in seasonal, whatever, is Tate. Like, I think outside of Tate, the volume is not concentrated enough.
Larry Fitzgerald is going to be super popular against San Francisco at $6,100 on paper. The matchup is really good. He's coming off a really good game Monday night. But the last time he was in this spot was week 2, and he just disappointed everybody in a great spot, in a great matchup. Everyone owned him, and no, didn't happen for Larry Fitz. So in GPPs, is he a play or is he a fade here, do you think?
I'm having like a moral crisis on Fitzgerald because I just don't like to roster players that are that old. And his target share is insane. And I do think that Palmer is a play in this spot. They have no faith in their running game. Like they know they're not very good. They don't want to give Kerwin Williams the ball. They don't want to give Chris Johnson the ball. Andre Ellington was not involved against Dallas, really. But I don't know. Like, all of the data would suggest that Fitzgerald is a play here, but I don't know if I can personally play him.
Would there be an ownership threshold for large-scale tournaments that would turn you off of him? Like, if I told you he was going to be 18% owned, would that be too much?
No, 18% would not be enough to get me off of anyone I thought was a play, really.
25%?
25 to like 30% is the range where you just have to start fading guys because the chances they bust are greater than that.
All right, so this next little mini tier, we'll get to Crabtree in a second, but Crabtree and Cooper are both in the $6,000 level too. People know their history against Denver. Not great. Everyone is looking at last week and being like, oh, these guys suck. Is there a contrarian? Obviously, they're going to have low ownership, and that would be a contrarian play just in and itself. But there's, as we always talk about, a difference between being contrarian and being stupid. Is there a case to be made for the Raiders' triple stack of Carr, Cooper, and Crabtree against Denver, knowing that no one else is going to have them, coming off a bad week?
I mean, if you ever wanted to get Amari Cooper at 3% ownership, this is your week.
Yeah,
this will be one of the lowest owned he is all year.
Now, is that something you still want to do?
Me? No way. I don't play 150 entries. Like I'll play like 10, 15 tournament teams, and I'm not planning on allocating any of that to Amari Cooper.
If you were playing 150, would you?
If I was playing 150, I would put him on 10%, still knowing that was overweight.
Okay. That makes sense. I'm not going to be playing Amari Cooper, but I think there's a case to be made that even if you wanted to just go deviate from the beaten path at all, you can have a pretty chalky lineup, and if you just threw Cooper into one of those spots, or Crabtree, or potentially even Carr as your quarterback, then all of a sudden your team is way different than everyone else's.
Yeah, I mean, the case to be made is just that we're not that good at projecting, and we know Amari Cooper like has physical talent, so just like don't bet on your ability to perfectly prognosticate things. Like understand that there are things you don't know.
Oh, no, see, I wouldn't say that at all. I think through 3 weeks of the season, we all know exactly what's going on in the NFL.
Yeah, oh yeah, we've got it all. We've got it all figured out. It's basically the games we might as well just play them on paper at this point.
All right, so below Cooper, you got at 5,900 Sammy Watkins, Thielen, J.J. Nelson, Lucky Pierre Garcon, Martavis Bryant, Funches, who's now up to 5,300, Deshaun Jackson, John Brown, who's still questionable with the quad, Sterling Shepard, Rashard Matthews, and Danny Amendola. They're both at $4,900. I think people are going to be very intrigued with Sammy Watkins. He suffered a concussion last Thursday. It looks like he's going to play. We just watched everyone be able to pass all over Dallas, and we've now seen that 2 weeks in a row. I think that Sammy Watkins is going to be popular here, and every time that there's a popular Sammy Watkins, I just kind of run the opposite direction.
Yeah, he gets like 3 targets in a good spot.
Yeah, like it just, I find him to be one of the most maddening players to figure out. Now, we know that his upside is gigantic, but I could see this being more of a Cooper Kupp game than a Sammy Watkins game. Like I can't get a grasp on this Rams offense outside that I know that Gurley's going to touch the ball a lot.
I mean, last week does not necessarily support these results, but going back several years, Dallas has done like everything they can to eliminate wide receiver ones, which is the position that Watkins is playing right now. The play in this range for me,
Thielen.
Like my second wide receiver is either Fitzgerald or Garcon, I think.
You're not worried about Patrick Peterson on Patrick. I keep saying stupid Raptors have ruined my ability to say Patrick Peterson and Patrick Patterson. Now I interchange them. Patrick Peterson, you're not scared about Garcon just locking him down.
I mean, like, what is even the point of having Patrick Peterson like shadow Garcon?
See,
like the 49ers...
now you're doing it too. Now that he's in OKC, you're gonna have this problem as well.
Yep. No, I know, but it's just like what's the point? Like, what is the defensive value in shutting down a guy who averages like 6 yards a catch?
Well, he's got to cover someone. Like they're not.
So is this the George Kittle game?
Oh, Kittle me Timbers, maybe.
Could be, but yeah, I'm not personally worried about that at all.
Okay, so cash games, I probably would go for a safer option than Pierre Garcon, but we saw what his upside can be because we know that even if Peterson is on him, the Hoyer's still going to force him the ball.
He's still gonna get 8 targets probably.
Yeah, is that enough for $5,500? Like, I think Thielen and Watkins just have more upside. Although I just objectively like Pierre Garcon more than those two guys. But like the big playability with Thielen and knowing that Slay is probably not going to be on him against a bad Detroit defense, he might be the one over Diggs that goes crazy in this game.
It's so, like Thielen is the one that like seems to me like his production is going to dip over the course of the year because like I think he's good, but I think Diggs is clearly better.
But there might become a point where the opposing defense just says, you know what, Diggs is better. We're going to do everything to take him out. And Thielen is pretty good himself, and he just might get lax coverage.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I think this is actually the hardest decision in cash games this week because I think you can make a case for Fitzgerald. I think that you can make a case for Thielen. I think that you can make a case for J.J. Nelson, for Pierre Garcon, for Deshaun Jackson, for Rashard Matthews. Like I think this is a really interesting range.
Would you go Nelson or Jerron Brown if John Brown doesn't play?
I would go Nelson.
You go Nelson, and you're going to get him at 0 ownership after he laid a dud on Monday night.
Yeah, he was terrible, but
he had a chance to. I mean, he had one big catch called back. He almost had the touchdown that just got tipped out of bounds. Like he was very close to another big game.
Yeah, and I think that he's like kind of like more in that role of someone who is going to be productive on DraftKings. Just like he does run the down the field routes, but he's also like small and shifty enough to run out of the slot, to run close to the line of scrimmage, like. And I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that all 3 Cardinals starting wide receivers have usable fantasy games.
Oh man, you're really buying Carson Palmer this week, aren't you?
No, I like hate Carson Palmer. Like I think Carson Palmer is dust. But like even Carson Palmer as dust is good enough to like get 240 passing yards and 24 completions against the 49ers.
Other guys that are somewhat interesting here in this low 5,000, upper 4,000, I think Funches if Benjamin doesn't play, even if Benjamin does play against the Patriots because their defense is so bad. Sterling Shepard, we talked about Beckham being able to break big plays against a banged-up Bucs D. It's a lot of Bs, but Shepard looks to be the next guy in line to do that over Brendan Marshall, who I'm still not sold on whatsoever. And Rashard Matthews.
Brendan Marshall does not exist. Just like delete him from your player pool every week.
Excellent. I'm perfectly okay with that. It's something I might actually see if I can self-exclude Brendan Marshall from popping up on my lineups. That would be fantastic. But Rashard Matthews is the other one. If Corey Davis misses week 4, which he's in danger of doing again, I like this spot against Houston. I just like him. He's good.
I do as well. Like Rashard Matthews, I think clearly appears ahead of the pecking order of Eric Decker. 10, 5, and 9 targets. He's good. Like Rashard Matthews is a good player, so I'm on board with him as a play. Especially, like, I think this is a really good price at Houston because it seems like Watson can play, so it's not like this is going to be a Tennessee beatdown.
Are you one of the many members of the DFS community that is still hyping the Eric Decker train?
No, so like I know Decker has been my guy for a long time, but when he signed in Tennessee, I was like, this is a nightmare. Because they have 2 guys who can do what he does, and that's like excluding like a Corey Davis breakout.
So from this like 4,000 lower end area, me and you seem to like Marquise Lee by far the best.
Yeah, I think Lee is just like a lock. Like I think he's like a free square. I think he will be as owned as Higgins was last week.
I don't even know if he will. People don't like Marquise Lee. People just don't like the Jags and they like.
People don't like the Jaguars. Yeah.
People like their D. That's fine, but they want no piece of this offense.
Yeah, like, and if you're saying you like their D, like, if the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be chalk D, like, that means a lot of Fournette should be played, and I don't know if it will be.
It won't be. Just no one wants to touch this offense.
Yeah, Fournette is getting, like, an insane amount of volume. Like, he's getting, like, rookie year Gurley volume.
Yeah, and he's been productive I think he scored a touchdown every single week, hasn't he?
I don't know.
I think he has.
The chances I was waking up to watch the London game, 0%. But yeah, he does have a touchdown every week.
So, I mean, he's getting the important touches, and he's getting a ton of touches. And he's catching passes out of the backfield.
He's even catching passes, which I did not know if that was going to happen. But he is confirmed catching passes.
And we got some, like, Grant last week. We got some Chris Ivory last week. That's because they got up by so much. Like, that is potentially an outcome against the Jets as well. But, you know, it is Jacksonville, so... I don't
see Jacksonville winning very many games 44-3.
What? Nah, that's a hot take.
Personal hot take. Don't think they blow very many teams out.
Okay, so it's Marquise Lee for me down here. I do have interest in Cooper Kupp if this is not a Watkins game, and like I've seen enough Robert Woods in my life to know that he's not great.
Oh, so. Dude, someone played Robert Woods against me in a 109 in week 2, and I was just like, this cannot possibly be real life.
Well, it's good that it wasn't a week 3.
Yeah. Oh, I would have been so tilted if someone turned over like a 18 DraftKings points Robert Woods game against me.
The 2 other guys that I think are intriguing for big play potential, I've already talked about Goodwin. I think LaFell, especially after doing nothing last week with Eifert out again.
Guess who had Brandon LaFell in cash games on DraftKings?
I'll raise my hand on that one too. Yeah,
I thought it was so sharp. Like the game's lock, he's like 3% owned in 50-50s. I'm like, I'm counting my money right now.
It turns out when you and I are on the same page, it just doesn't work out.
No, it doesn't. So I guess everyone fade Marquise Lee hard.
Yeah. And Delvin Cook. 2 guys are just going to be awful this week. But I'm going back to LaFell again for the same reasoning I went to him last week and just hope it works out this time.
I'm not.
I'm not doing it in cash, but he is going to be populating my GPP lineups.
So the thing about LaFell is he's like Terrence Williams or Robert Woods. Like, he's out there because he knows the playbook. He's a good run blocker, and he's like where he's supposed to be. He's not out there to catch passes.
But sometimes he
does.
That's
like the Brandon LaFell. Sometimes he does, but like Brandon LaFell is like not good at football though.
I don't know. He's put together quite a career for a guy who's no good.
I mean, I guess he's been fine. Like, I wonder I don't even know what Brandon LaFell's like best season is. Let's see what Brandon LaFell's best.
He had the Patriot season where I think he had 1,000 yards.
There's no way Brandon LaFell has a 1,000-yard season.
I thought he did with the Patriots that year.
1 year, 953 and 7 touchdowns in 2014.
With the Patriots?
With the Patriots. And then the next year, he had 74 Tom Brady targets and turned those into 0 touchdowns.
Sick. All right, It just seems like their only passing option right now is A.J. Green. Eventually, maybe the Browns aren't the team to figure that out, but someone's going to take away A.J. Green at some point.
I guess maybe they're dedicating all their resources to shutting down LaFell.
Maybe that's what everyone's been doing all these years. We just haven't noticed.
No, the tilting thing about that game was they left LaFell in single coverage every play. Like, he was out there on an island every play, and Dalton just was like, whatever.
Well, Dalton just might not be good at all.
No, he's not. He's definitely not.
All right, the only other guy here is Travis Benjamin against the Eagles. Aguilar is somewhat interesting, too, because the Chargers just suck against slot receivers. I don't like Aguilar, and I don't think he's good, but I can see a scenario where he's just open all the time.
I got one for you. So it looks like Jordan Matthews has no targets, right? 3, 3, and 5.
He did last week.
His 5 targets doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a big target share of the Bills' offense. And I already quoted that stat about Tyrod Taylor. Like, I would expect this to be Tyrod Taylor's like most passing attempts in a game this year, and Jordan Matthews is the wide receiver one there.
Okay, let's switch to quarterbacks, and there were 4 quarterbacks just right off the hop cash-wise that I wanted to talk to you about. One is Andy Dalton against the Browns. 2 is Tyrod Taylor against the Falcons. 3 is Trevor Siemian at home against the Raiders, and the other one is Deshaun Watson up against the Titans. For cash purposes, which one do you think you're going to? Because I'm torn. I think that Siemian is objectively the best play in this group, but I don't think that he presents the highest floor. I think that Watson actually presents the highest floor against Tennessee, and I like that he's cheaper than Tyrod Taylor.
I am going Siemian. I'm like pretty sure about that I'm going to play Siemian. Siemian or Tyrod is who I want.
So you would go Tyrod over Watson?
Tyrod has added 3.4 rushing yards or 3.4 fantasy points per game with his feet thus far without scoring a touchdown. I think Watson has the long rushing touchdown in his locker, but I don't want to project that. And I think that Tyrod, gun to my head, if I had to go, which one of these guys are you dead sure will get 15 fantasy points and not less than that, I would say Tyrod. And with the cheap QB, that's the game you're playing.
I think so, but even if you look at Deshaun Watson's rushing yards through 2 games that he's actually started, I mean, they're pretty good. 67 one week after the big one. He had 41 last week, 8 attempts, 5 attempts. I think you can project him out pretty safely for 35 rushing yards as well.
Yeah, I think I think Watson, I think he's close. I think he's in that group, but I also think that the Buffalo, I know for sure, without a doubt, that Tyrod is going to get into a game script where he has to be involved on offense, and this Texans game could be 14-10.
It could be, although I think that we've seen from the Titans over the past 2 weeks now that their offense is getting better and better and better. Their defense has been surprisingly pretty good, too. If they can generate a pass rush, they could give a lot of problems to the Texans. So I guess there is downside with Watson from that front. I just think that Siemian, again, he doesn't have the rushing floor, although he does run a little bit, and he might sneak one in for a touchdown. But, I mean, it's not at the same rate of Watson or Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, he's added 1.2 fantasy points per game with his rushing this year.
Yeah, and that's not including the touchdown that he ran in. But
correct.
He's thrown multiple touchdown passes in his last 3 home games. I just see a different quarterback when he plays in Denver than when he's on the road. And he gets this Oakland defense that's just terrible.
They're so bad. They have 0 interceptions and 6 sacks through 3 games. They suck. They just suck.
So that is the play then, is to play. Would you play Siemian by himself in cash? Would you pair him up with Emmanuel Sanders? Or would you go Siemian, Sanders, DT, be on your way? Because there's very few instances where you can actually pull off a triple stack knowing that 2 receivers are going to get so much of the market share. Yeah, Benny Fowler might catch a touchdown. One of the tight ends might get one in. Maybe CJ Anderson scores 5 times and, we're all left in the dust. Those are weird outcomes to project. The more likely ones is that Siemian throws for a bunch and he throws to Sanders and he throws to Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, so if there was a theoretical universe where I could play Trevor Siemian divorced of the results of Sanders, I would still play him. And the same is true of Sanders. If I could play him divorced of Simeon's results, I would play Sanders. Just plays that stand alone, I would play them both in cash, and having them as a stack is just a nice bonus.
So for us, it goes Siemian, Taylor, Watson, Dalton among those 4?
Correct, yeah.
All right, let's talk top end then, because without Aaron Rodgers on the main slate, I don't know what to do with my cash quarterback. I just plug it. That's where I start my cash lineups every single week. I just plug in Aaron Rodgers and then figure the rest out. It's a highly successful cash move.
Very interesting. Not even week 2, Brady at the Saints, you still went Rodgers?
I still went Rodgers. I just used it like I made that decision last year about halfway through the season. And when Rodgers started heating up and they started passing like 80 times a game, I was like, I'll just play Rodgers every week and see how this works out. And then I just started rolling in cash games. And so far, even like with losers like LaFell on my team, Rodgers he's just like a free 24 points every week.
I mean, that's fair. That's not how I play. If I was paying up, there's only one guy I'd want this week, and that's Brady.
Yeah, Brady at $8,000. Do you think that will kill his ownership at all?
Oh, I think definitely that it will. But I think that the sort of the context of this week is going to lead people to playing cheap quarterbacks.
Well, I think there's a lot of decent, cheap options. That's why people do it. And there's just, frankly, not a lot of expensive options on the Sunday main. Like, you have Brady at 8,000, you have Matt Ryan at 74, then everyone out, the next highest guy is Wentz at 6,600. Like, everyone's kind of cheap.
Yeah. And that's the thing. But there's no value to me in paying in the mid tier, right? Like, why are you paying? Like, how much more upside does Carson Wentz have than Simeon? Really?
He doesn't. No,
so there's no reason to pay over 6,000 for a quarterback this week, unless you're playing Palmer. I'm recommending him as a play, but I will say personally right now, like skin in the game, I'm not going to play Palmer because I don't see that much of a difference in projection between Simeon or Taylor and Palmer. But I do think that Palmer probably has the best ceiling of the value quarterbacks.
Can you talk me out of playing Cam again? Besides the fact, and if you just say he sucks, he might suck. But he's playing this Patriots defense, man. Like, I know he was in the best spot ever last week. But now he's fit. I'm never getting Cam cheaper. I know he's down options. But, against this Patriots defense, he's got to do... I am going to risk it that he does something this week. Because no one wants to own him anymore.
I mean, you just, he's got to start running.
Yeah.
If he doesn't run, he's not a good fantasy quarterback.
No, but he's got to start running soon, doesn't he?
No, if he's hurt or if his mental space is weird, he's not going to run.
What if he just starts sneaking in touchdowns? Can he do that again?
Is their offense even good enough to generate multiple goal line opportunities a game? I don't think so.
Against the Patriots, they have to be. The Patriots defense reeks.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots defense sucks, but Newton is just playing bad. I don't think he is bad. I just think he's playing really bad right now, and I got to see something before sure, he's a 10 of 150, but if you're playing 15 teams, you're not playing him.
Yeah, I might have to make just one solo Cam lineup, or even pair him up with McCaffrey and see how that works out. He's one of the few QB RB stacks.
Sure, you could pair him up with McCaffrey. I don't think that's terrible. I'm not doing it, but I don't think it's terrible.
Are there any other quarterbacks that we should really mention as potential plays, even super cheap ones, like Kaiser?
Yeah, I mean, Kaiser, sure.
I mean, I think you get more bang for your buck with Simeon at exactly the same price.
Kaiser just, he's pulled out some fantasy results, man, but he does not play well.
What about Jameis against the Giants?
Giants' defense is, not bad.
But it's not great like everyone thought it was going to be.
Jameis is also not playing his best football thus far.
Well, maybe Jameis just doesn't play great football.
It's also possible. Yeah. And I also don't think they trail in this game, so I think that it's kind of just more ball control, Buccaneers offense.
The only other reverse kind of recency bias situation that I would think of is everyone played Stafford last week. He didn't wildly disappoint, but he wasn't great.
Oh, he wildly disappointed because I had him, and I was because all my friends had Kaiser. So I'm just looking at them celebrating their 26 points, just tilting my head off that Stafford sucked.
Sure, you could have started Phillip Rivers last week, though, and ended up with negative points. So Stafford was sort of middle of the road. He didn't return the value that everyone thought he was going to return at his price. But now he's in a situation where he's probably going to have to pass a lot on the road. It seems like a good spot for Matt Stafford to kind of rebound a little bit. Now you're getting him at 1/15th the ownership.
Yeah, I would go Stafford as the contrarian quarterback over all these other guys.
Okay, I think I'm on the same page as that. I mean, the only other two that I kind of gave a look at, but like you said, there's not a big difference between these $6,400 and $5,200 guys like Mariota and Rivers. Mariota with the potential to run is always intriguing to me, but I don't know how much he's going to have to do it here.
This to me is not an attractive fantasy game. You know what I'm saying?
It could be, though. I feel like it could be higher scoring than people think.
I'm just like, because I tend to play like a limited pool of players and I focus, like most of my time is spent playing cash games. Like I'm not giving that much thought to this game.
All right, let's switch to tight ends at the top. Gronk is $6,600. Then Ertz, then Witten at $5,000. That's impressive. Delaney Walker is $49. Kyle Rudolph, Eifert, Brait, Clay, Ben Watson, and then Ryan Griffin. We're already down into the $3,500 area. This is a hard week for tight ends. For me, if you're going to pay up, Zach Ertz remains the guy. He's $6,300, but eventually the Zach Ertz chalk is going to go away, but the more and more his price goes up, the less and less people are going to use him. So I'm okay with him. I don't think it's where I'm going to be paying up in cash because I think that's way too much in a tight week. For me at the bottom, I love Jesse James against the Ravens as a GPP like upside play. I think weirdly enough, Safarian Jenkins has cash value.
ASJ is like a legit cash play.
Ryan Griffin has cash value, and I think that Ben Watson is a great pivot play off Charles Clay, who is the most tagged player at any position on Fanshare Sports right now. I am not buying the Charles Clay chalk again. I just can't do it.
Why not?
Because every time that he's in it's like Watkins and some of these other guys, every time they're in a great spot, they wildly disappoint. Every
Clay's
time.
like 5 catches for 35 yards. Just like take it.
Do I want to take that? I would. If that's like he has to score a touchdown to really like make it detrimental to not using him. I mean, I think I would take just other guys and hope he has a bad game if everyone's going to use him.
I don't ever like to take a stand at tight end. Like I like to just do what the crowd is doing at tight end. And yeah, that's what I'm going to do with Clay. Clay or ASJ is going to be who I play in cash games, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, ASJ, they talked about like, oh, he doesn't know the playbook. He might not even play week 3. Then he gets on the field, ends up with 5 catches. He gets 5 catches. So
he's their best pass catcher.
Oh, that's so sad.
I mean, the Jets are terrible. They got nothing. Jermaine Kearse is their wide receiver 1.
No, and he's under-cursed. So that's not good news for him.
Yeah.
But like, why not Ben Watson? Like, I feel like Ben Watson's a better play than Charles Clay.
Ben Watson, I mean, he breaks my rule of not playing guys who are as old as Monty Burns.
That doesn't matter. Ben Watson's smartest man in the history of football. He's figured out ways to get around all these things.
It's true. It's just like, I don't know. I don't buy the 8-target performance against Cleveland. That's not who I think Ben Watson is going to be this year. I would definitely prefer Clay over him.
I think if Max Williams sits out again, I think that he could be that. And even last week, like he really scrounged out value last second by catching that touchdown. But I think he's going to be their red zone presence in the passing game. And almost like one of the reasons I like Buck Allen, just because he presents so many easy completions for Joe Flacco. Look at all the targets Pitta got last year. I really do think that Ben Watson can transform to be into that guy. And he's only $3,600.
Isn't Ben Watson legitimately like in his 40s?
He might be 38. I bet he's like 32. He just seems real old.
I'm on, like, I think the reason we think of Clay as like this low floor, like low ceiling type play is because Buffalo never passes, and they're gonna pass this week.
Sure, but I don't even know if we see more Charles Clay because of that. Like, Zay Jones got 0 market share last week. I bet you he gets back on the board this week. And if it comes down to super easy completions that they need to make, it just might be dump-offs to Shady. Like, I don't think ever Charles Clay is a lock for anything. And that always worries me. I would always prefer a 5% Charles Clay with upside rather than 25% Charles Clay, even in cash games. Like, I just don't think he's that good.
My argument is just I don't want to fight. Like, I don't want to fight for leverage at tight end unless I have a really strong take, and I don't have a really strong. Well, I don't know. Maybe I really do like ASJ. It's early. I need to look at it a little bit more, but maybe I will have a really strong take and want to fade Clay. But as of right now, he seems like the obvious play to me.
Everyone liked Ed Dixon last week, despite the fact that he can't catch. Do you think that people?
He didn't end up being like insane chalk though.
He didn't, but way more people used Ed Dixon than ever should have used Ed Dixon.
I started the week thinking Dixon was a play, and then someone mentioned to me that he didn't have 4 targets in a game since 2012, and I went to go look at his reference on Pro Football I went to go look at his game logs on Pro Football Reference, and it was true, and I was just like, you're right, I can't play this guy.
All right, like I say, if Vance McDonald doesn't play, I think Jesse James is the GPP play from this range.
Yeah, sure. I like Vance.
No. If Vance sits, like then James is the play.
Oh yeah. Sure. I don't know. Do you think ASJ is going to be like 7% owned?
Yeah, people don't want to use the It's like the Jacksonville thing. People just don't want to use guys on the Jets.
Yeah, I'll use ASJ.
All right. Well, you said before you had a strong take on defense this week. Hit me.
Cardinals, man.
Yeah, I was leaning that way too.
Yeah, the Cardinals are the way to, like, if the Jaguars are going to be pure chalk, you play the Cardinals.
So the Cardinals are $3,200. The Jags are $3,600. The thing is, and I got myself, like, did you end up, like, I think across all my teams, I didn't pick one correct defense last week. That hurt.
Well, I just like to go all in on a defense because defense scoring is so stupid that I don't want to dedicate too much of my brain power to, like, predicting defensive touchdowns. So I just went all in on the Eagles. I had 100% of the Eagles across, like, a lot of teams, like on FanDuel and DraftKings. Like, I was just all in on them.
I had 50% exposure to the Eagles last week, but like, they weren't very good.
No, but they should have been, though.
Yeah, they
like,
should.
That's the thing.
Yeah, they should have been, but they weren't.
No, even with how the game went, like, they stopped him on fourth down inside the red zone or inside the 30, like, twice, and they just generated no sacks. Like, how do you not sack Eli, you losers? Like, that was so tilting.
The Ravens are only $3,000. I know they just got lit up by the Jags, but like through the first two games, they did nothing but turn the ball over and
bet against Road Ben.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, like it, and I don't think that people are going to use them because people don't like using anyone against the Steelers because of their potential upside. But like Road Ben, just even home Ben didn't look good so far this season. He just might not be good Ben anymore.
Yeah, he might just be old. That happens.
And like their defense can still swarm. I mean, I don't think that Bell's going to run the ball down their throats. Like the more he gets involved in the passing game, I think the better it is for his production and fantasy value too. So, I mean, I can see them scoring points, but Ben can do stupid things.
I also think Jets D will be a team that is not owned, and you're just like, well, it is Blake Bortles still. So.
Yeah, I mean that's for $2,600. You could do worse, I think.
Yeah, you could like I've made worse plays than that. I'm positive.
No, I mean I definitely have, but that's me. That's why I do what I do and make my terrible plays.
It's what we do.
Yeah, that's why we end up agreeing on terrible plays and then talk ourselves into it and then are shocked when it doesn't work. Texans, Ravens, Vikings, Rams, like anyone else besides the Jets below $3,000 that you like?
I'm not really seeing it.
All right. So Jets would be lowest you'd go. I like the Ravens, the Cardinals. I think objectively the Jags are the play though. Like if you can fit the $3,600, whether they're chalk or not, maybe not for giant scale tournaments. So check back on Friday when I do the ownership projection show to see where we kind of see the Jags falling. If it's like above 25%, they might end up being a really nice fade. That's how we ended up off of Rashard Higgins last week because it was like this guy's gonna be like 30% owned, and we don't even know if he's good or not.
Higgins was like an elite fade.
Yeah,
like, in a tournament, just like 0%.
But even to talk about his production in general, when we talk about a player like that, yeah, he's a great price. We don't really know a ton about him. It looks like the market share is going to be there. But like even if he gets up above 20% at any time, like we don't know if this guy is good or not. So why would you play him knowing that everyone else is playing him? Sure.
Yeah,
if he goes off
marginal plays like that, just don't play them in tournaments.
Yeah, that's always the way to go. And yes, if the guy goes off, you lose. But what are really the chances of that guy going off? I mean, they're not great.
It's like fading those marginal wide receivers is almost always sharp, but fading the marginal running backs is bad, in my opinion.
Not like Wendell Smallwood this week. Like, so just play Wendell Smallwood.
No. Like, I'm not even saying – I'm, like, more dramatic than that. Like, say C.J. Anderson got hurt, fading Jamal Charles would be bad. Or, like what's a team where there's, like, if Elliott got hurt, fading whoever stepped in for Elliott, whether, like, the team announces that McFadden would be back or Alfred Morris. Or if Dalvin got hurt, like, fading Latavius Murray or McKinnon would be bad.
So what you're saying is that if a running back situation presents itself to be, like, a free square at a cheap price, always do it?
Yeah, like the free square running back is the play, whereas like the quote unquote free square wide receiver, just more things can go bad.
All right, any more top defenses? Steelers, Bengals, Pats, Eagles. Eagles against Phil Rivers is
Eagles, yeah.
So
sure.
So Jags, Cardinals, Ravens, Eagles. Those are kind of the four. Jets for a cheap one.
Yeah, that would be what I don't know. Like I like I said, I like to go all in on a defense just because I don't want to be worried about it. And if I get the defense right, I don't want to be tilting that like on my best like offensive players team, I got -4 from the Ravens defense or whatever.
Yeah, I like to mix and match a little bit. Almost, I understand the going all in.
Your strategy's probably more profitable.
I mean, it's not. At least the way that I use it, it's not. But at least in my mind, the way that I have it figured out is that, like, with defense being such a high variance position anyway, that giving myself, trying to identify the 3 or 4 biggest upside, at least in my mind, defenses, and then spreading out my equity on those 4 across different types of lineups. Like, even to the point where if there's 3 defenses I like, if I make like 12 lineups for that week, I'll do like, let's say 4 quarterback receiver combinations with different teams around them and use one of the defense with those things. So even if my core group of guys does go off, at least one of my defenses will benefit from it if they go off as well.
Yeah, correct.
All right, Davis Mattek. Check him out on Twitter, at Davis Mattek. And again, the Swolecast, which is in Central Time only, I think.
You can only watch it if you are in the Central Time Zone.
That's rough. So when's it on again?
6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. Rotogrinders.com.
And it's free until
2 or 3 hours after the show.
And if people watch it live, they can come tilt you in the chat?
Yeah, they can go to the YouTube chat where we have it up, and they can be like, Davis Mattek is a loser, whatever, and I will tilt at you, almost for sure.
Yeah, and then you'll cry after you go off air, because that's mean.
No, I love it. I love the trolls, man. And also, people thinking I'm a fish has gotten me, like, just some of these softest games. Like, the people that play me in NFL Daily Fantasy are so bad. Like, the people that take my games are so bad at NFL DFS. It's amazing.
Because they think you're the biggest layup in the world, apparently?
Yeah, just like these loser idiots on Twitter will be like, "Oh, Davis is a loser. I'm gonna challenge him to a game," and then they play like just the worst plays against me.
Yeah, well, I mean, people are playing Robert Woods against you, but I never hear from these people or see these people again after they make these claims.
There's this one guy on Twitter who I probably am like 65 to 70% win rate against, and he plays me every week.
Awesome.
It's good.
All right, so Davis Mattek, if you want to challenge him to a game, go to twitter.com at Davis Mattek and check him out there. All right, thanks for being on the line, dude.
Thank you.
This is fun. This is a long one, too. This is the longest DFS show of the year. And I had Al on at one point.
Yeah, oh yeah. I love to talk this stuff, man.
Of course. So you'll be back in the future, I'm sure. And I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can check out my cheat sheet up at dkplaybook.com for a running scroll of all my content. The Facebook page is probably the most consolidated form of that with all the links directing you where to go. Plus, at the top of every column, there's a link to every single piece of content I will have out that week. So it's easy to do, on demand and everything. Subscribe to the video version of the Pat Mayo Experience on the DraftKings YouTube page. You can watch short clips on the DK Live app for iOS or Android, so you may want to go check that out. Plus, the podcast, that's the big one. Download it at iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Audio Boom, whatever device that you use. You can listen to it on TuneIn and iHeartRadio as well. It's easy to find, it's free to listen to, and it's uncut and uncensored. What more could you want? I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck this week. I'll see you next time.